You see, that one of the things that's true about me is I'm trained as a scientist. I have a PhD from Yale University, and I went to Berkeley.
And when all this happened, what would you say inspired your activism?
Was at UC Berkeley, and John Kennedy came to give a speech in the football stadium. Mm-hmm. And John Kennedy was inspiring. He said in his speech that people can make change, and it affected my entire adult life. The trial was the result of the riots at the Democratic Convention, and basically we planned democratic anti-war demonstrations at the Democratic Convention, and as a result, the police were violent and caused a riot themselves. The trial was really about the movement of the 60s and about the activities that had developed. You realize 1968, the United States underwent major changes. Martin Luther King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was killed, and there were riots all over the country. And so when we were planning the demonstrations for Chicago, we anticipated there was going to be violence. For example, one day, at one point, David Dellinger his bail was taken away because he'd given some speeches that the judge didn't like, and so Dave Dellinger had his bail removed, and that led to a disruption in the courtroom. And at the next morning, Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman came to court with wearing judges' robes, and they took the robes off, and they were underneath the robes were police uniforms. So that was some of the activism that was in the courtroom. My mother, for example, lived in Berkeley, California, and she sent me a box, and in the courtroom, and people all said, "Don't open the box because it's probably a bomb, and you will get blown up." And it turned out that it was 5 pounds of jelly beans from my mother. So I was surprised to be indicted, but it turned out that I was acquitted, whereas 5 people were convicted and 2 people were acquitted.
How did you feel when you were acquitted? Being one of
I cried.
You cried?
I cried because I felt that the 2 of us who were acquitted, I wanted to be with my friends, and so I wanted to be found guilty. So I would be part of so they wouldn't have the effect of the government as splitting the Chicago 7 into pieces. The mass media was friendly to the defendants. The first night of the demonstrations, we were in Lincoln Park, and the police went through with nightsticks and beat people mercilessly. And that night, when the police came through the park, I saw a news media guy being beaten by Chicago police, and I knew then that we had won. We won because if the police are prepared to strike with violence the news media, then the news media is going to be supportive of the demonstrators. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. And although they struggled to to maintain their neutrality, you basically had a friendly defendants, and you had a biased judge in prosecution, so that media ended up basically being supportive. That I'm a scientist on the one hand, and then on the other hand, however, I was a social activist, and so I felt that there was some personal conflict between my social activism and my scientific profession. Mm-hmm. So that one of the things that I had to work out at the end of the trial was, what does a Chicago 7, who's a PhD scientist, do? And what happened was I ended up working in the Carter administration. I've been a scientist at UCLA for over 30 years, closer to 40. And the research I've done has been relevant to dealing with toxic substances, and I was able to deal with my schizophrenia fairly effectively. I have been able to deal with the what it's like to be a Chicago 7 on the one hand and a professor on the other. Yeah. And that's been a very valuable and meaningful way of living. Today's political climate. Yeah. Well, we have a president who's narcissistic and basically a criminal. Yeah. The truth. And so that he reflects the worst of the worst. So in the 60s you had student and radical activities, and that was very important, and was there was significant levels of activity that went on, and now you have similar activities, but the question will be, is there a way to work with Congress to actually improve the circumstances and to bring back bring to the fore a movement for change in the United States. The important thing about the Chicago trial, was that it really did have a profound effect on people's consciousness.